What's up, everybody? It's me, Chris Bramley from UNFUN Stuff, owner, operator, sponsor, daddy, whatever you want to call me, over from unfunstuff.com. Remember to go check out the website, www.unfunstuff.com, for all of your MHA CCG needs, whether it's promos, singles, product, whatever you need, we've got it. You can pre-order your set 3 stuff today. It's very, very exciting. And if you haven't, check out our UNFUN Fridays weekly tournament starting at 8:30 p.m. EST on Fridays. It's a time that works for everybody in America, and we have the best weekly in the world. Anyway, that's not what you're here to talk about or see. What you're here to talk about or see is this Momo deck that got this playmat and this gigantic pile of promos this weekend at the Gencon 2022 regional. Let me tell you a little bit about this character. I'm not going to tell you the words on her. This is not the video for you. This is not a beginner video. This is a video for experienced players who are interested in playing a deck that is very, very different from a regular deck list. So, let's talk about Momo. Why I'm playing Momo over someone like Toga. I think that Toga is actually better into this deck than Momo is into Toga. If I knew I was going to be playing against Kirishimas, against Momo Mirrors, if I knew I was going to be playing a lot of Life Symbol or even Asui for an entire tournament, I would not have played Momo, actually. I would have played Toga. I think that Toga is very, very good in Control Mirrors. I think she's very, very good into Asui because she gets to find her Faith Shields. She blocks well enough to be able to deal with her as well. And her speed is more free, so therefore more applicable against them. But the reason why I played this character is because she's incredibly resilient against turn 2 aggression. She's very, very good at not dying early and getting to the point of the game where she doesn't die. If she gets ahead of you, it's oftentimes over. If your opponent is smart and is able to pressure your board, and you let them get ahead of you, then it can be very, very difficult to play. But it requires a different kind of play style because of how a 6-hander works in general, the way that tutoring in a game like My Hero Academy works, and because of the foundations that are particular to her. So, I want to start with a presumption that I need you all to get used to here, which is that I played an entire tournament of Universes, assuming that I was going to be checking a 4. On every single card that I played, I assumed I was going to check a 4. If we go through the list, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 4 checks in the deck. 16 4 checks. And when I go to quote-unquote full power, and I put the sideboarded 4 checks in, which happened in a lot of games, it went up to 18. Now, that's 18 out of 70. It's not actually an insane number, but blocking and using your speed hate and playing your turns out as if you were going to check 4s, except for turn 1. Turn 1, it doesn't matter. Always just play for the greediest line possible on turn 1, going first or second. But every other turn, if I'm playing around my speed hate, I'm assuming I'm checking a 4. If I check a 5, I'm plus on the turn. If I check a 3, I am neg on the turn. And it helps to mitigate the amount of, it helps to estimate the amount of card resources you need to be using over the course of a turn, and it's a different play style than any other kind of way that I played the game in general. I don't like playing a ton of 4 checks, but I guess that's a lie. I love playing the cards that have 4 checks. I don't like checking 4s, so adjusting my play style to accommodate the cards that I want to play was very, very necessary in order to have success with this deck, because if I played around checking 3s or 5s, it affected my win conditions. Anyway, so I chose Momo because I think that she's very good into Tokiyami. I think that I needed to be able to beat Tim Keefe playing Tokiyami. I think I needed to have better odds of success against people like David Pena, who are kind of omnipresent in top cuts. People who are good at tapping down my board, which is the one thing that I was having trouble with as Toga, was if somebody was smart enough to flip my my releases with Apathetic, or they were controlling my board state, I wanted a character who had more defense on their face, which is what this character has. She tutors any block zone from her discard pile, and she has release, quote-unquote, better release, actually, on her face. People discount the amount of control that this character outputs because it was just Nathan DeWalt playing Staff Strike memes with this character. But Kevin Broberg showed us in the last regional over in Orlando that she's an incredibly powerful character of her own right, and if you disrespect her offense, she can just blow you out. And we'll get into why she gets to do that later. But starting off with the character, the actions, and the assets, it's just the classic Momo package. You must play a suite of weapons. You have to play 4 Quick Create for this character to work. I like Trace Sheet Cape. I think it's an incredible deadlock option. It unflips your wall clings. It unflips your new training methods. It unflips your cards that maybe were flipped with Apathetic. It's just a very, very good card if you find it. I have actually blocked with this and then built it down too. So don't get discouraged by the block modifier. Block modifiers do not matter in this deck most of the time. And 1+ Ultra, because sometimes block modifiers do matter in this deck. Somebody sends a 20,000 mid speed thing. It doesn't matter how many risk and completeds you have on your board. You sometimes need something better than a reset, which is to just auto block something. And when you have the power of wall cling and release in your deck, plus Ultra is just an incredibly good card. So those are the assets, the actions. Let's talk about the foundations. First up is Amphibious. Amphibious is, if it is not banned after this weekend, I'm going to be very surprised. This card is insane. I think it's the reason why Momo gets to play such oppressive defense, because after you block with a weapon or a Faith Shield or whatever, you get to just ready your board. So even if you're being stunned, or if you're playing greedy and aggressively on your previous turn, you can just be rewarded for it and ready your Amphibiouses for the low cost of playing an enhance on a 1 difficulty foundation. I think this card is way too strong. And of course I'm playing 4 of it because it is the best 1 difficulty on these symbols, but I wish I didn't have access to it because it just allows players to play like fools. The next 4 of is Passing the Torch, which is another incredibly powerful card. We kind of, there's a quote that Kevin Brober came away from after he lost to Barry Everson last tournament, and that was really what piqued my interest in the deck. He said that he had a turn where he played a back alley haymaker into a couple of attacks that he didn't feel he needed to, and he could have, quote, drawn a card with Passing the Torch, Momo'd to tutor up any weapon, a block, like a mid block, specifically against Barry Everson, playing Jiro in that event, built 3 and passed turn. And I said to myself, that's awesome. That's everything I want to be doing on turns where I'm uncertain if I can kill my opponent. I want to always be, and this is the thing that Toga does very well, right? She plays attacks and she doesn't care what happens to that attack, right? And I think that Momo is in the same state. But instead of cycling through her deck to find her tools and excited for Bloods to get an immense amount of card advantage over her opponent, Momo gets very particular tools from her discard pile. So you can tutor up your incredibly powerful weapon foundations that block and then build afterwards. You can tutor up your weapon attacks that stun your opponent or kill them in the case of Cannon Blast and Home Run Comet. And you can also just get the right zone. If you know your opponent's attack lineup, you can just grab the right zone every turn, and having the best zone against your opponent every single turn is something that's just very, very strong. Passing the Torch lets us get to that level of the Excited for Blood in Toga, where we just tap it sideways. We can even tap it sideways and then yeet it with the remove. I didn't do that unless I was falling behind or something like that, and I really needed to get some advantage back, but it's just, it does a lot of the work for us. Precious Lesson is the equalizer for Momo. If you get 2 or more copies of this card in your stage over the course of the game, you are plussing on resources, which is what makes her unfair, like what creates an unfair situation, because normally Momo is never resource positive in terms of what she destroys or removes. Precious Lesson gets her a resource back, and it's not unfair, but it is what allows her to remain advantage in terms of the board state. There's a reason this is not a weapon, and the reason is because that card is incredibly powerful and you're supposed to build it. And that's why we have 4 of it. We want to see it every single game. Next up is a suite, and I mean a suite, 1,000 3Fs. Because this deck, I felt like above 70 cards, it was clunky. But these 2 act together in a really strong way. Rescue Completed is one of the best speed hates in the game. It is a 2 low block And in a deck that is not checking poorly because it has lots and lots of foundations and not that many attacks, we don't mind playing too many 3-diffs. When it's combined with Study Group Leader, we can commit Study Group Leader and then respond with Study Group Leader once per turn to ready itself due to the cost of a commit cost, right? So I get essentially a free -2 speed. Now, you might be wondering why you need that in a character that already puts -2 speed on whatever she wants. Destroying foundations is expensive. We never want to be too far behind our opponent. And so every time that I don't have to use Momo Enhance is a time that I'm not destroying a foundation and I'm remaining ahead. I'm remaining resource positive against my opponent. These two, if I were to rebuild this deck, I would put at 4-ofs. The other response in this card came up quite a few times. I removed Flash from Jiro's attacks. One time I actually cheated by accident and I took off Charge. I'm sorry, Wesley Bittner. I didn't know that this card said keyword ability, but I messed up. That's my bad. But you can get rid of stun from attacks. I did that against Back Alley Haymakers. You can get rid of combo from a staff strike. You can get rid of, like I said before, flash from a second specialized sound waves to get you a crucial enhanced step back. It's a low-key, really strong card. I wish it did get rid of a keyword trait, because then I could get rid of kick from a frog kick or something like that, but I mean, they can't all be zingers. This, by itself, with rescue completed, creates board states where we're just like, we don't have to use Momo Enhance to neg speed on things, and that's really, really powerful. And also, offensively, we can use it to pay for the cost of Cannon Blast, or to pay for, we have poke turns a lot of the time. We'll get to the attacks later, but when we play our poke turns, oftentimes I'm playing one attack, and I just use every copy of Rescue Completed and Study Group Leader to put free speed on things, and that's really good. Next up is 3 Release. If you are using Release in this deck, you are probably very, very far behind, or you're about to die. Or you're just using a cheeky plus ultra play. But sometimes it came in clutch to play around somebody's reset. Sometimes it was just a 0 diff, or sometimes it was just a 2 high block. It's the only 0 diff in the deck, specifically because when I play Back Alley Haymaker, I do not want to get baited into building in a 0 diff. I always want to be drawing cards, and I trained myself to only draw cards with that card and not build in 0 diffs unless I was trying to kill somebody and needed more resources to blow up or play. But most of the time what I was using this for was to destroy weapon foundations, to put back in my pool, to give 2 speed and recycle. So it was actually used more offensively than it was defensively. And if you don't understand what I'm saying with that, what I mean is I could, with Momo, tap this for speed, maybe, release, and then use a quick creation to put the weapon that I destroyed with release back in my pool. So that way I could destroy the release, for instance, and build in the Starlet again. And Starlet itself could build in other weapon assets or foundations or something like that. I wouldn't do it every time, but sometimes it was a cool play that you could do. Next up, of course, is that Rising Starlet for the reasons that I listed. This card is an incredibly good block. It's 2 high. It has the weapon keyword, which means we can build it down. And every time we do build it down, we heal 1 life. And that's really strong. Most of the time when you're using Momo Enhance and you're not trying to kill somebody, you are picking up Rising Starlight, because the high zone is the most prevalent zone in the game, at least as far as like big, strong attacks go. And this card offensively can let you get really, really strong turns. A lot of times my turns would start with a Rising Starlet into a quick creation into whatever attack I needed to play for that turn, and then you could Momo, build down Rising Starlet, build down the quick creation, and then continue doing the rest of your turn. But the engine tools that this allows for your deck is just very, very strong. New training method is doubles up. We were playing a lot of 2 difficulties in our deck. If I saw this in my opening hand, I played it every time. And in fact, I think every 3-of in this deck, I would want them to be 4-ofs, including this card. It's very tough to pare down resources for this deck. But it also lets us go resource positive in terms of checking foundations, picking them up to play later. So oftentimes you will play a Back Alley Haymaker, check a 5, whatever foundation is, we can new training method, pick it up, remove the new training method now that it's committed to pick up whatever foundation we need from our discard pile, and now we are net 3 cards offensively. Because we played the Back Alley Haymaker, we picked up a card with new training method, we drew a card with Back Alley Haymaker, and we tutored a card with Momo Yarurozu. It's just a very strong card. I think that I would go up to 4x after this tournament. Encouraging Training Partner is very good offensively. It is very good defensively. People will be using speed hate against your character, and you cannot use your speed enhance on every single enhanced step that you need. Oftentimes you can bait your opponent into using their speed hate and then using Encouraging Planning Partner to turn it back into a 4-speed attack, using Momo to destroy the Encouraging Partner, or you can tap it, rescue complete for 1 speed, and then destroy it with Momo for 2 more speed, turning your negged speed, if they use like a specialist of sound, or specialist of sound or something like that, into a 7-speed attack is a very, very powerful thing. Again, I had a 4th one on my sideboard, and every single game I sideboarded more in. Just should have just played 4 of it. Someone with style, very, very good against stun, specifically, and also on longer strings. A lot of our cards in our deck we want to be counting as more for the purposes of Cannon Blast, and this is one of those cards that readies itself at a tall cost. This is a 2 difficulty that only readies itself, but when we're trying to resolve long strings, or we're trying to resolve big difficulty attacks, quote unquote, like Cannon Blast, this card comes in clutch. And we had a 4th copy sideboarded for things like Tokiyami, things like the Mirror, or any life symbol deck that are playing lots and lots of stun. It's a good card. Walkling. It's important that you play 1 copy of the XR, 1 copy of the regular art, and 1 copy of the regional art, because you can trigger your friends, and that's important to me. This card I had a 4th copy sideboarded. It's not necessary in absolutely every matchup, but it does mean that you get some breathing room. You can hold a mid block and not have to tutor with your character, because the more you can be greedy with your character and not use your resources, the more you can stay ahead, and that's really important. I think that Walkling is a very important card. You want to not die to throws. You want to not die to. You want to be able to play Walkling with a plus ultra and auto block absolutely anything on any given turn. It's just a very good card. Face Shield. Again, here's another card. I probably should have just played 4 of it main boarded. Face Shield is a card that you can just hold. It's an auto block. It's not key for every single character, right? But this character who puts -4 speed very, very easily on pretty much every attack that she wants to, is going to be able to play the Face Shield on any given turn. It's disruption when you need it. It forces people to use their block zone, their stadium and things like that. It's just a really, really strong, very, very powerful card, denying combos, denying Asui her kick and all that stuff. It's just very strong. High value target. Assuming Amphibious gets banned, which I am assuming, I think that card should get banned. I would just put in 2 more copies of this card. It's very good in the one matchup that is actually very difficult for you to play against, which is Jiro, because we don't get to put automatically -4 speed at any given time in our attacks. High value target is also very good against another pretty bad matchup for you, which is Shigaraki. If Shigaraki gets to resource deny you, you are not able to stay ahead on resources. High value target lets you at least keep the important foundations that you do want. It lets you get rid of this instead of the Gale Force target. It's just a very, very strong card. I only played 2 because I didn't feel like it was necessary, but it was strong, and there were better 1 difficulty options, namely Amphibious and Precious Lesson for the deck. So assuming Amphibious gets banned, I would put more copies of this card in the deck. If Amphibious is not banned, I would keep it at the same level it is. 2 is perfect, I think, normally. 1 Observant Student and 1 Excited for Blood. The other 2X was Preparing for Battle. It's got Breaker 1 on it. It's got a low block. You can tutor it and weapon. Also, the XR is really pretty. 1 Observant Student. I know that some MMOs are just like always planning to play against people in deadlock, but ideally you want to kill somebody before they go to deadlock. And also tons and tons of people have tons of ways to stay out of deadlock. So always planning for deadlock when you have 4 of the best deadlock in the game, just static for playing your character, I wouldn't do it for that. What I do like it for is that it has a 1 low block that I can hold in my hand, and flipping to look at the top card of your deck against Jiro specifically is very, very strong. So situationally, of course, you know that Deadlock is very good. We can tutor up any ranged card, but it's just a 1x. I don't think you need tons of this. Excited for Blood was a card that I sideboarded out of absolutely every match that I played. Every single time. I had already enough to high blocks in the deck. I didn't feel like I could reliably get the response off, and I didn't want to play attacks that could reliably get the response off. So as much as it is a automatic 4x in Toga, I think it is a 0x in Momo. I don't think you should be playing this card in this character because it baits you into playing attack strings that you should not be playing because you're trying to chase the response. And do not chase the response, guys. You can just play Pass to the Torch. You can just play attacks that cantrip you by themselves. You do not need this 3 difficulty that does it by itself. Oh, sorry, that does it off of the trigger. Let's go into the attacks. The 4x's are easy. Back Alley Haymaker and Create Capture Net. Because the only times we get to kill anybody are by either our opponent disrespecting our offense and leaving themselves open, or by creating openings for ourselves. Our attacks are not fast enough normally by themselves to just kill somebody, so we need to stun their board and get our value back. The life symbol has 2 of the best stun attacks in the game, so why not play them at 4x each? We can tutor up our create capture net, which has some interesting plays that I can describe in a second. But let's talk about Back Alley Haymaker first. Back Alley Haymaker is a 5 difficulty too high 4 mid 5 that is actually a 4 difficulty if you want it to be. I don't tutor 0 diffs with this card in this deck, ever. Unless I'm going to be killing somebody and I need more foundations to tap for the turn. Most of the time, it is there because this is a cantrip. And cantrips are very, very important for this deck. On turns where we do not have Back Alley Haymaker, you really feel it. And I'll explain why. On a classic turn, you will draw 6 cards. As Momo, you want to be using your enhance, your once per turn enhance, pretty much every one of your offensive turns, so you can sculpt your blocks for your opponent's turn, so that you can sculpt a better staging area. You know, you want to get rid of your face downs that don't matter anymore. You want to maybe get rid of your spam that doesn't matter anymore. Things like that. So if you drew your 6 cards and you did not have a cantrip in it, you would have to play a regular attack. Let's say Home Run Comet. Okay, we play Home Run Comet, and we have 4 foundations. Now I've got 5 cards in my hand, and I have to remove one of my foundations to go get another card. I have 6 cards in my hand now. I plus 1, right? Home Run Comet goes for 3 high 4. Let me posit a different situation for you. Instead of Home Run Comet, I play Back Alley Haymaker. I have 4 foundations, one of which is a Passing the Torch. I draw 1 card. I'm now back up to 6 cards in my hand. I tap Passing the Torch. I'm now up to 7 cards in my hand. I remove Passing the Torch. I pick up whatever weapon I want. I'm now at 8 cards in my hand. And this happens frequently. It lets us build immensely fast and immensely big, and it's very, very strong. Again, that thing I keep saying, becoming resource positive, is really, really important for the deck, I think. So Back Alley Haymaker fulfills those two big functions for the deck. It lets us loop up our deeper string attacks that end in like Home Run Comet, and it is a charge for that purpose. But it also just acts as a big opener, right? As a big poke. It could do whatever we want it to do on any given turn, and that's really strong. Draw cards. It has EX on it. It has stun 2 on it. It's just it should have been a UR. This card is insane. It's very, very good. And I don't think it's broken, but it is very, very strong. Create Capturing Net. Create Capturing Net is in a similar spot to Back Alley Haymaker. We can open with like a Weapon Foundation, a regular foundation, and create Capturing Net and get those 2 foundations into our pool very easily. We can also check a foundation on a previous attack, use Quick Creation to put that foundation in our card pool, and then build that foundation in, kind of becoming, again, I'm going to stop saying it eventually, I swear, resource positive by the end of the turn. Oftentimes, you can even play this card raw if you're not planning on stunning your opponent. Passing the Torch, destroy Passing the Torch for 2 speed with Momo, put the Passing the Torch in pool with a Quick Creation, build down the Passing the Torch, draw another one. So even by itself, this card can become a double cantrip, and that's pretty strong by itself. And again, it has stun 2 when we combo off of it, and that lets us loop up our opponents for our 2 kill cards, which are Cannon Blast and Home Run Comet. I think that if I were to remake the deck today, at this precise moment, I would turn one of these Cannon Blasts into Home Run Comet. It has the better block modifier, and it's easier to do the deeper string. Cannon Blast is the better poke, for sure, which is why I had this at 3F, because if I drew it raw, this was better than drawing Home Run Comet raw. But oftentimes when you're being pressured and you need to create openings to do damage to your opponent, Home Run Comet is better. So it might just be a situation where they should just both be at 2x, or you could have one main, one side of each of them. Like you keep your more commonly used one, which might be Home Run Comet, you put the 3rd Cannon Blast in and you just swap it in for them. But they fulfill a similar space. Cannon Blast by itself is kind of the bait. If I open with Cannon Blast on a turn where I'm planning on killing my opponent, I can tap resources that ready themselves, like Amphibious, like the tutoring with Momo foundation, like someone with style, and send a 9 high 11 that my opponent has to block. And oftentimes they have to tap 4 cards to do it or more. And that lets my follow-up attacks do actual damage, especially if they're following up with stun and things like that. But yes, it can absolutely kill somebody. And in fact, when I played against Tokiyami and Asui, the reason why I had 3x of the Cannon Blast is because I wanted to be able to draw a Cannon Blast, send a 9 high 11, pick up another Cannon Blast, send another 9 high 11. Assuming they had tapped out, they're dead. So I wanted to be able to double tap a 7-hander that was disrespecting my offense, or not disrespecting, but just trying to kill me on their turn. Home Run Comet by itself is very good at killing the characters that are more resilient to the cannon blasts. Deeper Strings will get this card to powerful 5 and beyond, and if you've got a double Home Run Comet turn, you'll be able to really do some gigantic damage. A lot of times, my Hail Mary plays ended with Home Run Comets, so just a very strong card. Getting to 19 damage by itself is kind of nutty, kind of schnetty. I had 1 Tongue Whip, 1 Instant Shining Flash, 1 Net Gun, 1 Naval Laser Beam. I could tutor up either of these guys. I think that Net Gun Surprise is way better to tutor than Instant Shining Flash because you have things like Wall Clang and stuff like that. But Shining Flash, being able to discard momentum, comes in clutch sometimes. I don't think I would play more than one of these cards, and I probably would take Instant Shining Flash and put it into the sideboard for the decks that it matters against. But Net Gun Surprise is, I think, a card that just having in your card pool discourages your opponent from attacking further. And it triggers Amphibious's ability when you decide to make it leave the pool. So there's nothing more debilitating, I think, than being super prepared for your opponent's turn and not using Net Gun Surprise because they think they're playing through it. It's really strong. Anyway, so those are those two. Tongue Whip is, I think, very important in the Kirishima matchups. It's very good in the Mirror. It's very good on against anybody who is planning to block everything you post out because it's going to give 1 speed to everything for the turn. It's kind of like a Toga enhance for the entire turn. I think that's really, really strong. If I could somehow if I had 15 card sideboard instead of a 10 card sideboard, I would prepare to turn from Momo into Toga in a mirror situation or a control situation because I think she's better at it than Momo is. But this lets us, if we find this card late in the late game, it lets us play a deep string that can actually kill somebody. And that's why there's another one on the sideboard for Kirishimas and for the life mirrors and stuff like that. Naval Laser Beam is just good in general. The discard of momentum enhance, unflipping 2 of our foundations can be any of our foundations. It can unflip our Wall Clings against throw decks. It can unflip our new training methods if we're trying to get our resources back. It can unflip, any number of things. Encouraging training partners. I've done that before against Tokiyamis. It's very good enhance. And by itself, it's a 5 mid 8 with Momo a 7 mid 8. And that's pretty strong. I don't think I would ever use that unless I was in a pinch and I really needed to just kill somebody, but that's pretty good. Most of the time, though, it's just a breaker 2. And that's why there's another copy in the sideboard. Sometimes you just need a breaker 2. I would probably just put both in the sideboard, though. The last attack in the deck is the one that people are going to be memeing about, but it fulfills the criteria that if we remember that quote I said about Kevin Broberg, it does everything that I want this deck to do. This is a 3 mid 4 difficulty attack. It is the biggest breaker bait in the game. Every good breaker is mid. Okay, this is always getting blocked. If it's not getting blocked, then your opponent was just like, yeah, I don't care about 4 damage, right? But it has a 2 high block, and I think that the high zone is the most important one in the game. If you want to be blocking Crone Frogs or Dark Shadow Ruins, or the Cannon Blasts, Home Run Comets, things like that, you want to be prepared with high blocks, and my deck is very, very over-prepared for the high zone. But this card draws 1 front card for each copy of Future Charge in the card pool. I don't play a 4X suite. This got sideboarded out in a lot of decks, but it acts as 3 more copies of Back Alley Haymaker for us. It gives us an enhanced step that is just an enhanced step that draws 1 card. This is neutral, right? When I play it, I get another card back, right? And I get to do the Momo thing. For if I have Passing the Torches, I can tap those, draw even more cards. But it's just an enhanced step that lets me use the Momo once per turn. And that's the important thing. Because during an enhanced step where I draw a card and use the Momo enhance, I'm not losing a resource because I get to build a foundation afterwards that and this one isn't negging my hand size for it. So it did a lot of work for me in terms of what I wanted the deck to do. In this specific case being draw 1 card. Sometimes that's all you need. I think for someone like Kurogiri, you could do this too. You could have 4 copies of your Future Charge. You could have your Extends and things like that. And sometimes you get the funny things where you get like double Future Charge out. Or like one time I played a Future Charge, checked a Future Charge, shoved it into my pool with a quick creation, and then drew 2 cards off of it. But the dream is playing a Future Charge, drawing 1, playing a second Future Charge, drawing 2 more, and being just like absolutely head over heels in terms of your draw power for the turn. But you should absolutely never expect this to get hit. If you're playing against a deck that has any breaker 2s, you got to take it out of the sideboard, or take it out of the main board. It's not good in those matchups. But against anybody where you're just like, just trying to get your foundations, you know, trying to sculpt for your turns, it's very it does the job. It does the job, which is it draws one single card by itself. And that is the main board. That is the main board of the deck. It is, I think, exactly 70 cards. I might be wrong. And in a pinch, you always cheat and put United the Cosmos on top of your deck. Let's talk about the sideboard. 1 rescue completed, 1 wall cling, 1 face shield, 1 Summonless Style, 1 encouraging training partner, 1 naval laser beam, 1 plus ultra, 1 for all full cowling 5% strike, 1 knife slice, 1 tongue whip, and 1 instant shining flash. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that's 10. We got it. So let's talk about each of these ones. These are all foundations that are 3Xs in the deck. And this is what I do a lot. I think 4Xs are cards in your deck that are required to function. They are an engine card. Your 3Xs are cards that are very, very good, but they're not an engine card. They don't get your motor running. These are all cards that don't get the motor running apart from rescuing completed. I would make this a 4X in the deck and just take out the Excited for Blood. But again, I didn't want too many 3 difficulties at the time. But if I were to change the deck list, I would just find another sideboard slot and put a 4th copy of Rescue Completed, because I think it is a part of the engine. Walkling is not a part of the engine, but it's very good in some matchups to have that at a 4X. Same with Face Shield. Same with Summonless Style. Same with Encouraging Training Partner. Sometimes you need speed resets, offensively or defensively. You want to use that for those matchups. Sometimes you need Stun Hate. Sometimes you don't need Faith Shields and you don't need Walklings. So oftentimes the other 3Xs, when I put these in, let's say I'm putting in Summonless Style, I'm putting in Encouraging Treatment Partner, and I'm putting in Risking Completed. I can take out the other Walklings, or I can take out the Face Shields, or I can take out attacks and keep those other ones in. But it's very, very versatile to do this style of sideboarding where you have a bunch of 1Xs that turn your 3Xs into 4Xs and other 3Xs into 2Xs or 1Xs or 0Xs. And it's my favorite way to sideboard. The attacks were kind of a suite of attacks that I could change out the future charges for in situations where I just wanted to create weird, awkward situations for my enemy. Knife Slice, I saw Nathan DeWalt do this cute little deadlock play where he was just picking this up and making a 10-low-10 with that makes his opponent lose 3 life every turn. I thought it was cool. And it has a 1 bid block. So I put it on the sideboard specifically for Kirishima because Kirishima is usually brazenly going to deadlock. It's also good into All Might 3, who is also brazenly going into deadlock against you. Naval Laser Beam, just another Breaker 2. I like having Breaker 2. 1 for all full cowling, I think is actually really good in the mirror because it creates an attack that they must block. And most of the time when I'm playing the mirror, I do it pretty aggressively. I play pretty greedy so I can try to get ahead in resources. And full cowling is an attack that they have to block that you can put a bunch of your own speed stats and stuff like that onto and force them to use their resources. It is gonna get blocked. Don't get me wrong. Even against Kirishima, I would put it in against Kirishima as well. But it's an attack that must be blocked, and it has a 1 low zone, which is good against both of those matchups. I'm not sure if I would keep it into my sideboard, but it certainly felt good when I played it. Tongue Whip, I think, is just, it's good in some specific matchups. Again, those long game ones where I want to have that free 1 speed for the rest of the game, or that turn. It's good early, it's good late. It's just a strong card by itself. Another copy of Instant Shining Flash because sometimes you want to hate on momentum. Like, for instance, against Ochako or against somebody who's playing cards that go into... I don't know, man. Momentum. Plus Ultra is very good. It's a free block. I think that if you're planning to beat David Pena in any top cut, because he's going to be in every single top cut. This time he was playing Kirishima, but most of the time he's playing Ochako too. I keep saying it. If you want to beat David Pena, put a Plus Ultra in your main board, put a Plus Ultra in your sideboard, and put a 0 mid block in the rest of your deck. I didn't need the 0 mid block in my deck because this character is... her level of blocking is farcical, but yeah. Still play your Plus Ultras, though. Plus Ultra is so important. And I think that people who are not playing it as 2 between main and side are crazy. And that's the deck. Let's talk a little bit about how to play the deck, the strengths, weaknesses, and how you would beat it, perhaps. Let me get a... whoop. Let me get my media thing up. All right, so let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the of my version of the Momo deck. It's not the same as Travis's. It's not the same as Kevin Berbrig's. It's not the same as Nathan DeWalt's from that event where there were 4 in Top Cut. But here are the strengths and weaknesses of my build specifically. It is incredibly hard to kill. You can sculpt your kill turn over the course of multiple turns. I was often thinking 4 or 5 turns in advance, and that's really cool to be able to do that. You never not have the wrong block zone. You will always have the right block zone if you want to. And that's really powerful in and of itself. Block modifiers don't matter unless you're playing against flash attacks. And that's also very cool. You can be playing with a bunch of 3+ blocks in your hand, and you have so much speed hate that it doesn't matter. And in a format that was full of Kirishima 2s, which I played a bunch of Kirishima 2s, being able to just block out every single attack that they sent out was probably pretty frustrating for them to deal with. And that's the next point. You can frustrate your friends with it. Block everything. And kill them when they disrespect your offense. It's very good. And also, my favorite thing to do in any card game is tutor. And if I've been saying tutor and you're like, bro, what the hell is a tutor? I mean physically taking a card out of your discard pile because you've advanced the game state and putting it into your hand. I want to be able to grab a card. I want to be able to have the card that I want at the right time instead of having to wait around or sculpting for it from the top of my deck randomly. I want to pick it up and use it when I want to use it. And that makes me feel good. And that's I don't think that's an unpopular opinion, but it is the thing. It's my favorite thing to do in card games. So this character letting me do that is really, really is a huge plus for me. The weaknesses of the deck are that it plays really, really differently. It's incredibly difficult to play. It's not easy. You cannot let yourself get baited into playing the wrong card at the wrong time. I've already seen a couple people playing my deck list and not doing it the way that I think that they should be playing them. Depending on the matchup, you need to be playing aggressively or like a little wilting flower. Against aggro, you need to just build, and you have one attack you get to play every turn, and it's either Future Charge or Back Alley Haymaker, and so on and so forth. So oftentimes you have to find your openings. You have to play perfectly. So that you don't lose your resources, your health total, and get blown out of the game. Because 26 health is not that hard to lose, guys. If you're not ahead of your opponent, you are losing the game. Momo's enhances, both of them, are incredibly costly. And that's why I have so much emphasis in my deck list on drawing cards and on filtering and grabbing more cards. That's why there's no tight lips. There's no floating around my babies to tutor with Back Alley Haymaker, because I do not want to even give myself the option. I don't need more damage on my attacks. I'm gonna kill my opponent over the course of the game by playing better. I don't need +1 damage. What I need is card advantage. Strict card advantage, and that's what this deck has in spades. And that again goes into the playing ahead of our opponent. We want to always be ahead. It requires a wildly different playstyle. Again, earlier I was talking about how I was assuming I was going to check a 4 on every single check I made for the game, and I think that is probably the most effective way to play this deck in general, because you can't, that way, at least defensively, it helps you to play better. The biggest problem, I think, for new players or people who haven't played a character like this is that it's prone to what I would call analysis paralysis, where you get yourself in a situation and you see your hand, you see your discard pile, you see your opponent's discard pile, and you have a huge plethora of options in front of you. And the important thing is to not think like Chris Bromley does, or not to think like, oh, what's the best thing to do, but to pick a line and commit to it. Just do the thing and commit fully to it. And whether that be, oh, this is the turn I'm going in with a bunch of stun attacks into a Home Run Comet or a Cannon Blast, or if it's going to be a draw 1, Momo for 1, pass and Torch for 1, and then build 3 pass. Like, just make it, don't half measure things, right? Don't play Future Charge and then a stun 2 attack and then build 1, right? Because then you're not going to be resource positive. And by the same margin, don't play Cannon Blast with no follow-up, right? Your opponent is probably going to be able to block that. Sometimes it's better to review the Cannon Blast and, get ahead on resources than it is to do, to just like yeet a 9-11 that will get blocked. But yeah, anyway, I think it's a very cool deck. I think it was a lot of fun to play over the weekend. It was a really stark contrast from playing in Orlando. In Orlando, I didn't have a lot of fun playing Toga because I felt like a lot of decks were just coming from my throat every single turn, and they were disrespecting my offense the entire time. So I wanted a deck that could defend very effectively and poke very effectively, but wasn't like committing hard to that late game fantasy thing that Toga is, where Toga was just like, once I get to that like 8+ foundation range, I'm gonna have like 20 cards in my hand, and I'm gonna be able to block everything you do, and I'll be able to play this huge string with frog lashings and stuff like that. And I didn't need to do that here. I felt like I could just always be ahead on resources. I could sculpt the right turns. I could stun my opponent out at the right moment and play a big fat attack that killed them. And it worked out for the most part. I only lost 4 total games over the weekend. 3 of them were to Asui, who was killing me on 2. And one of them was to a Shigaraki, who I coached to a win, actually. So I think it was a very successful run. I had a lot of fun. I got the sweet mat that I'm definitely going to sell. If you're interested in buying either this mat or the last not collected version of the Searing Glacial Storm. What's it called? Not Searing. It's Heat Wave. Yeah, it's Heat Wave. You can message me because I'm not keeping that one. It's not gold. The only one I care about is getting a golden regional promo so that I can pair it with Jose's. But yeah, if you have any questions about the deck list or how to play or something like that, I hope this video helped you out. But if you have any further questions, you can DM me and I'll be happy to help you out. The deck list will be in the UVS Ultra link below. I hope you will subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our podcasts on Tuesdays, and we'll see you next time.